Hi, my amazing English learners, and welcome back to English Journey. I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here with me today because we're about to embark on something truly special, something that's going to transform the way you speak English in your everyday conversations. And I can't wait to share these 60 incredible phrases that native speakers use constantly, but that most English learners never quite master. So grab your notebook, get comfortable, and let's dive into this journey together. Because by the end of our time today, you're going to sound more natural, more confident, and more like a true native speaker than ever before. Now, before we jump in, I want you to know that everything we're covering today has been carefully selected based on real conversations I've had with thousands of students over the years. And these aren't just random phrases from a textbook. These are the exact expressions that will make the difference between sounding like you're translating from your native language and sounding like English is truly your second nature. So if you're ready to take your conversational skills to the next level, give me a quick like right now because your engagement helps me know that this content is exactly what you need. Let's start with something that happens to all of us every single day. Those moments when we're greeting people, saying goodbye, or just making small talk. And here's where most English learners make their first mistake. They stick to the basic hello and how are you, when native speakers have so many more natural and engaging ways to connect with each other. The first phrase I want you to master is, how's it going? And notice how I say it. How's it going? Now you try it. How's it going? And one more time with that natural rhythm. How's it going? This is so much more casual and friendly than, how are you? And you'll hear native speakers use this constantly, especially in informal situations. But here's the secret that most people don't know. The response to this question is just as important as the question itself. And instead of saying, I'm fine, thank you, try responding with, not bad, you, or pretty good. Thanks, or my personal favorite, can't complain. Let's practice that together. Can't complain. Doesn't that sound so much more natural and conversational? Now, speaking of greetings, let me tell you about a phrase that will instantly make you sound more native. And that's, what's up? But here's the thing. This isn't really asking for information about what's literally happening in someone's life. It's just another way of saying hello. So when someone says, what's up to you? You can simply respond with, hey, not much, you, or, oh, hey there, or even just, what's up, right back to them. Let's practice this natural exchange. I'll say, what's up? And you respond with, hey, not much, you, ready. What's up? Now you say, hey, not much, you, perfect. And that brings us to something really interesting about English conversations. Sometimes the most important phrases aren't about giving information. They're about creating connection and showing that you're engaged in the social ritual of greeting each other. Here's another greeting phrase that I absolutely love teaching because it shows such warmth and genuine interest. And that's, how have you been? Notice the difference between how are you, which is asking about right now, and how have you been, which shows you're interested in what's happened in their life since you last saw them. Let's practice the pronunciation together. How have you been? Pay attention to how have becomes have in fast speech. How have you been? Now you try it. How? Have you been? Beautiful. And when someone asks you this question, you can respond with phrases like, I've been keeping busy, or I've been doing well. Thanks for asking, or I've been good, just the usual. Let's practice that last one because it's so natural. I've been good, just the usual. Now you try it. I've been good, just the usual. Excellent. Now let me share something that's going to make your conversations flow so much more naturally. And these are what I call transition phrases. The little expressions that help you move from one topic to another or show that you're really listening to what someone is saying. And the first one I want you to master is, that reminds me. This is perfect when something makes you think of another related story or topic. For example, if someone mentions they went to a coffee shop, you might say, that reminds me, I tried this amazing new cafe yesterday. Let's practice saying this phrase with the right intonation. That reminds me. Notice how the stress falls on minds and me. That reminds me. Now you try it. That reminds me. Fantastic. And if you're finding this helpful so far, I'd love to see a comment below telling me which phrase has been your favorite up to this point. Another incredibly useful transition phrase is speaking of which. And this is perfect for when you want to bring up something related to what you were just discussing. For instance, if you're talking about movies and you want to mention a specific actor, you might say, speaking of which, did you see Tom Hanks' new film? Let's practice this together. Speaking of which, notice that natural rhythm. Speaking of which, now you say it. Speaking of which, wonderful. And here's a pro tip. That's going to make you sound even more native when you use these transition phrases. Don't pause too long after them. Let the words flow naturally into your next thought. So it would be, speaking of which, did you see Tom Hanks' new film? All in one smooth sentence. Now here's something fascinating that I've noticed in thousands of conversations. Native speakers have specific phrases they use when they want to show they're really listening and engaged. And one of the most powerful is, no way. But be careful, because this doesn't mean no in the sense of disagreement. It means, I can't believe it, or that's incredible. So if someone tells you they just got promoted at work, you might respond with, no way, that's fantastic. Congratulations. Let's practice the intonation because it's crucial. No way. Notice how your voice goes up on way. No way. Now you try it. No way, perfect. And you can follow this with phrases like, that's awesome. How exciting. Or tell me more about it. Let me tell you about another response phrase that will make you sound incredibly natural. And that's, you're kidding, which is similar to no way, but perhaps a bit more casual. And again, this isn't about whether someone is joking. It's expressing surprise or disbelief in a positive way. So if someone says, I just ran into my high school teacher at the grocery store, you might respond with, you're kidding. What are the odds? Let's practice this. You're kidding. Notice the contraction. It's not you are kidding. It's you're kidding. Now you say it. You're kidding. Excellent. And this brings me to something really important about natural English conversation. So much of it is about showing emotional engagement with what the other person is telling you. Now wait until you hear this next category of phrases, because these are the expressions that will help you when you need to ask for clarification, or when you didn't quite catch what someone said, and instead of always saying, what, or excuse me. Native speakers have much more natural and polite ways to handle these situations. The first phrase I want you to learn is, come again, which is a very polite way of asking someone to repeat what they just said. It's friendlier than what did you say, and more casual than could you please repeat that? Let's practice it together. Come again. Notice that it's said as a question, so your intonation should rise at the end. Come again. Now you try it. Come again, beautiful. Another incredibly useful phrase for these situations is, I'm sorry. I missed that, which is perfect when you were distracted or when someone spoke too quietly. And this shows that you take responsibility for not hearing rather than implying that they didn't speak clearly enough. Let's practice this together. I'm sorry. I missed that. Notice how natural and polite this sounds. I'm sorry. I missed that. Now you say it. I'm sorry. I missed that. Perfect. And you can follow this with, could. You say that again. Or, what were you saying about? And speaking of clarity, if you're getting clear value from this lesson, help me out by hitting that like button, because it really helps other English learners find this content. Here's another phrase that's absolutely essential for natural conversation, and that's, what do you mean by? Which you use when you understand the words someone said but you want them to explain their idea more clearly. For example, if someone says, the meeting was really intense, you might ask, what do you mean by intense? Let's practice this. What do you mean by? Notice the natural rhythm. What do you mean by? Now you try it. What do you mean by? Excellent. And this phrase shows that you're actively engaged in the conversation and want to understand more deeply, which native speakers really appreciate. Now let me share something that's going to transform how you express your opinions in English. Because instead of always saying, I think, or in my opinion, native speakers have much more varied and natural ways to introduce their thoughts and feelings about things. One phrase I absolutely love is, if you ask me, which is a casual way to introduce your personal opinion. For example, if you ask me, that restaurant is overpriced. Let's practice this together. If you ask me, notice how it flows naturally. If you ask me, now you say it. If you ask me, and you can use this phrase even when nobody actually asked for your opinion. It's just a natural way to share your thoughts. Another fantastic phrase for expressing opinions is the way I see it, which sounds thoughtful and considered. For instance, the way I see it. We should leave early to avoid traffic. Let's practice this. The way I see it. Pay attention to the natural stress pattern. The way I see it. Now you try it. The way I see it. Wonderful. And here's something interesting about both of these phrases. They make your opinions sound more conversational and less formal than I believe or in my view, which can sometimes sound too academic for everyday chat. Now here's a phrase that's going to help you when you want to agree with someone but add your own perspective. And that's absolutely, and which shows strong agreement while allowing you to build on what they've said. For example, if someone says, "This weather is beautiful," you might respond with, "Absolutely. And it's perfect for a walk in the park. Let's practice this connector. Absolutely." And notice how enthusiastic it sounds. Absolutely, and now you say it, absolutely, and perfect. And this technique of agreeing first and then adding shows that you're a good listener who builds on conversations rather than just waiting for your turn to talk. Let me tell you about another agreement phrase that native speakers use constantly. And that's, "You can say that again," which means, "I completely agree with you." But it's much more colorful and engaging than just saying, "I agree." For example, if someone complains about how expensive gas is, you might respond with, "You can say that again." Let's practice this idiom. You can say that again. Notice the natural rhythm. You can say that again. Now you try it. You can say that again. And isn't it fascinating how English has these creative ways to express agreement that are so much more interesting than simple yes responses? Now here's where things get really exciting because we're going to explore phrases that help you when you disagree with someone but want to do it politely and respectfully. And this is where many English learners struggle because they either sound too direct or too apologetic. The first phrase I want you to master is, "I see what you mean, but," which acknowledges the other person's perspective before presenting your different view. For example, "I see what you mean, but I think there might be another way to look at it." Let's practice this diplomatic phrase. I see what you mean, but notice how respectful it sounds. I see what you mean, but now you say it. I see what you mean, but excellent. Another incredibly useful phrase for gentle disagreement is, "That's one way to look at it," which implies that there are other perspectives without directly saying the person is wrong. You might follow this with, "Though I tend to think," or, "But have you considered?" Let's practice this subtle phrase. That's one way to look at it. Notice how non-confrontational it sounds. That's one way to look at it. Now you try it. That's one way to look at it. Beautiful. And if you're learning something valuable here that you can use in your daily conversations, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up because your support means everything to me. Now let me share with you some phrases that are absolutely crucial for making plans and arrangements with people, because this is where so many English learners get stuck using formal, textbook language when native speakers have much more casual and natural ways to suggest activities and coordinate schedules. The first phrase I want you to learn is, "Are you up for?" which is a casual way to suggest doing something together. For example, "Are you up for grabbing coffee later?" Let's practice this. Are you up for? Notice how relaxed and friendly it sounds. Are you up for? Now you say it. Are you up for? And you can use this for any activity. Are you up for a movie? Are you up for a walk? Are you up for trying that new restaurant? Here's another planning phrase that sounds incredibly natural. And that's, "How about we?" which is perfect for making suggestions about what to do. For instance, "How about we meet at 6?" Or, "How about we take the subway instead?" Let's practice this together. How about we notice the natural flow? How about we, now you try it. How about we? Fantastic. And what I love about this phrase is that it sounds collaborative rather than commanding. You're making a suggestion that the other person can easily agree with or modify. Now, speaking of making plans, here's a phrase that's going to save you so much trouble when you need to change or cancel arrangements. And that's, "Something came up," which is a polite way to explain that you can't do what you originally planned without going into all the details. You might say, I'm sorry, but something came up and I can't make it tonight. Let's practice this useful phrase. Something came up. Notice how it's pronounced as one smooth unit. Something came up. Now you say it. Something came up. Perfect. And native speakers understand that this phrase means you have a good reason, but you don't want to explain all the details. Let me tell you about a phrase that's incredibly important for being polite when you can't commit to plans immediately. And that's, let me check my schedule, which gives you time to think about whether you're available without having to give an immediate yes or no answer. For example, that sounds great. Let me check my schedule and get back to you. Let's practice this. Let me check my schedule. Notice how professional yet friendly it sounds. Let me check my schedule. Now you try it. Let me check my schedule. Excellent. And you can follow this with, I'll let you know by tomorrow, or I'll text you later tonight. Now here's something that's going to make your conversation so much more engaging. And these are phrases you use when you want to show genuine interest in what someone is telling you. Because active listening isn't just about being quiet while the other person talks. It's about responding in ways that encourage them to share more and show that you care about what they're saying. One of my favorite phrases for this is, tell me more about that, which invites the person to elaborate on something interesting they've mentioned. Let's practice this together. Tell me more about that. Notice how warm and encouraging it sounds. Tell me more about that. Now you say it. Tell me more about that. Beautiful. Another fantastic phrase for showing interest is, that sounds fascinating, which you can use when someone mentions something intriguing, whether it's a book they've read, a place they've visited, or a project they're working on. For example, if someone mentions they're learning to play guitar, you might say, that sounds fascinating. How long have you been at it? Let's practice this enthusiastic response. That sounds fascinating. Notice the genuine interest in your voice. That sounds fascinating. Now you try it. That sounds fascinating. Wonderful. And what I love about this phrase is that it makes the other person feel valued and heard. Here's another engagement phrase that works beautifully in conversations. And that's, I had no idea, which shows surprise and interest when someone shares something you didn't know, for instance. If someone tells you they speak 4 languages, you might respond with, I had no idea. That's incredible. Let's practice this expression of surprise. I had no idea. Notice how it conveys genuine amazement. I had no idea. Now you say it. Perfect, and you can follow this with questions like, how did you learn them all? Or which one was the hardest to master? Now let me share something that's going to help you when conversations start to lag, or when you want to change the subject naturally. And these are what I call conversation rescue phrases. The expressions that keep dialogue flowing smoothly, even when you hit those awkward pauses that happen in every conversation. The first phrase I want you to master is, by the way, which is perfect for introducing a new topic or remembering something you wanted to mention. For example, by the way, did you hear about the new park they're building? Let's practice this transition. By the way. Notice how it signals a topic change. By the way, now you try it. By the way, excellent. And this phrase is so versatile that you can use it to bring up almost anything. Another incredibly useful conversation rescue phrase is, that reminds me of something, which helps you connect what you're currently discussing to a related story or experience. For instance, that reminds me of something that happened to me last week. Let's practice this connector. That reminds me of something. Notice how it creates anticipation. That reminds me of something. Now you say it. That reminds me of something. Fantastic. And if you're enjoying these practical phrases that you can use immediately in your conversations, I'd love to hear in the comments which ones you're most excited to try out. Here's a phrase that's perfect for those moments when you realize you've been talking for a while and want to check if the other person is still engaged. And that's, am I boring you? But you say this with a light, joking tone, not seriously. It's a playful way to invite the other person back into the conversation. Let's practice the tone. Am I boring you? Notice the playful inflection. Am I boring you? Now you try it with that same light tone. Am I boring you? Perfect. And usually people will respond with something like, not at all, keep going. Or actually, I have a similar story. Now, let me tell you about some phrases that are absolutely essential for those moments when you need to wrap up a conversation gracefully. Because knowing how to end conversations naturally is just as important as knowing how to start them. And many English learners struggle with this because they either end too abruptly or they drag conversations on too long when the other person is ready to go. The first phrase I want you to learn is, well, I should probably get going, which signals that you need to leave but does it gently and politely. Let's practice this. Well, I should probably get going. Notice how it's not abrupt. Well, I should probably get going. Now you say it. Well, I should probably get going. Excellent. Another beautiful way to end conversations is, it was great talking with you, which leaves the other person feeling good about the interaction you've just had. You might follow this with, let's do this again soon, or have a wonderful rest of your day. Let's practice this warm closing. It was great talking with you. Notice how sincere it sounds. It was great talking with you. Now you try it. It was great talking with you. Wonderful. And these kinds of positive endings make people remember you fondly and look forward to talking with you again. Here's another closing phrase that's particularly useful when you've made plans or discussed something you'll follow up on. And that's, I'll be in touch, which means you'll contact them again soon, perhaps to confirm plans or continue a discussion. For example, thanks for the restaurant recommendation. I'll be in touch after I try it. Let's practice this. I'll be in touch. Notice how it promises future contact. I'll be in touch. Now you say it. I'll be in touch. Perfect. And this phrase works beautifully in both casual and professional situations. Now here's something really exciting. We're going to explore some phrases that help you express enthusiasm and excitement in natural, native-like ways because English learners often struggle to show genuine emotion in their second language. They either sound too formal or they overuse basic words like good and nice. The first phrase I want you to master is, I'm thrilled about, which shows high levels of excitement. For example, I'm thrilled about my upcoming vacation. Let's practice this enthusiastic expression. I'm thrilled about. Notice the energy in your voice. I'm thrilled about. Now you say it. I'm thrilled about. Beautiful, and you can use this for anything that makes you genuinely excited. Another fantastic way to express enthusiasm is, I can't wait to, which shows anticipation and eagerness. For instance, I can't wait to see the new movie, or I can't wait to meet your family. Let's practice this together. I can't wait to. Notice how it conveys anticipation. I can't wait to. Now you try it. I can't wait to. Excellent. And what I love about this phrase is that it's so much more expressive than simply saying, I want to, or I will. Here's an expression that shows you're really impressed by something. And that's, I'm blown away by, which means you're amazed or astonished. For example, I'm blown away by how talented she is. Or I'm blown away by the view from here. Let's practice this strong expression. I'm blown away by. Notice the impact. I'm blown away by. Now you say it. I'm blown away by. Fantastic. And if you're blown away by how much your English is improving with these phrases, make sure to share this video with someone else who's learning English. Now let me share some phrases that are crucial for expressing concern or sympathy when someone tells you about a problem or difficulty they're facing. Because showing empathy in conversations is so important for building real connections with people. And English has some beautiful, natural ways to express that you care about what someone is going through. The first phrase I want you to learn is, I'm sorry to hear that, which is appropriate for almost any bad news. From minor inconveniences to serious problems, let's practice this with genuine concern in your voice. I'm sorry to hear that. Notice how sincere it sounds. I'm sorry to hear that. Now you say it. I'm sorry to hear that. Perfect. Another wonderful way to show sympathy is, that must be really difficult, which acknowledges that you understand the person is going through a challenging time. For example, if someone tells you they're dealing with a sick family member, you might say that must be really difficult for all of you. Let's practice this empathetic response. That must be really difficult. Notice the compassion in your tone. That must be really difficult. Now you try it. That must be really difficult. Excellent. And you can follow this with, is there anything I can do to help? or please let me know if you need anything. Here's a phrase that's perfect when you want to offer support without being too intrusive. And that's, I'm here if you need anything, which lets the person know you care and you're available to help without pressuring them to accept help immediately. Let's practice this supportive offer. I'm here if you need anything. Notice how comforting it sounds. I'm here if you need anything. Now you say it. I'm here if you need anything. Beautiful. And this phrase works whether you're talking to a close friend or someone you don't know as well. Now let's explore some phrases that are absolutely essential for expressing gratitude and appreciation in natural, heartfelt ways, because saying thank you effectively is so important in English-speaking cultures. And there are many ways to do it that go far beyond the basic thank you that most learners stick to. The first phrase I want you to master is, I really appreciate it, which shows deeper gratitude than simple thanks. For example, thanks for helping me move. I really appreciate it. Let's practice this heartfelt expression. I really appreciate it. Notice the sincerity. I really appreciate it. Now you say it. I really appreciate it. Wonderful. Another beautiful way to express gratitude is, you're too kind, which is perfect when someone compliments you or does something especially nice for you. For instance, if someone brings you soup when you're sick, you might say, you're too kind. Thank you so much. Let's practice this gracious response. You're too kind. Notice how humble and appreciative it sounds. You're too kind. Now you try it. You're too kind. Excellent. And this phrase shows that you recognize the other person went out of their way for you. Here's a phrase that's particularly useful in professional situations, but works in personal contexts too. And that's, I can't thank you enough, which expresses that your gratitude is so great that words aren't sufficient. For example, you saved my presentation. I can't thank you enough. Let's practice this strong expression of gratitude. I can't thank you enough. Notice the emphasis. I can't thank you enough. Now you say it. I can't thank you enough. Perfect. And this phrase really conveys the depth of your appreciation. Now here's something that's going to make your English sound incredibly natural. And these are phrases for those everyday moments when you need to make small requests or ask for small favors. Because the way you ask for things in English can make a huge difference in how people respond to you. And native speakers have specific ways of making requests that sound polite but not overly formal. The first phrase I want you to learn is, would you mind? Which is perfect for polite requests, for example. Would you mind closing the window? Or would you mind if I borrowed your pen? Let's practice this courteous request form. Would you mind? Notice how polite it sounds. Would you mind? Now you try it. Would you mind? Excellent. Another incredibly useful request phrase is, could you do me a favor? Which signals that you're about to ask for help and prepares the person to listen to your request, for instance. Could you do me a favor and pick up some milk on your way home? Let's practice this friendly request. Could you do me a favor? Notice the warm tone. Could you do me a favor? Now you say it. Could you do me a favor? Fantastic. And people generally respond well to this phrase because it acknowledges that you're asking for something extra. Here's a phrase that's perfect for smaller, more casual requests, and that's, can you give me a hand with, which is a friendly way to ask for help. For example, can you give me a hand with these boxes? Let's practice this casual request. Can you give me a hand with? Notice how natural it sounds. Can you give me a hand with? Now you try it. Can you give me a hand with? Perfect. And this phrase is so much more natural than saying, can you help me with, in casual situations? Now let me tell you about some phrases that are going to help you when you're trying to remember something, or when you want to buy yourself some thinking time in a conversation. Because these little verbal pauses are so natural in English, but many learners don't know them. So they either stay silent, which can be awkward, or they use phrases from their native language that don't work in English. The first phrase I want you to master is, let me think, which gives you a moment to consider your response. For example, if someone asks you what you want to do this weekend, you might say, let me think. There are a few options. Let's practice this thinking phrase. Let me think. Notice how it buys you time naturally. Let me think. Now you say it. Let me think. Excellent. Another fantastic phrase for when you're trying to recall something is, "It's on the tip of my tongue," which means you almost remember something but not quite. For instance, I know that actor's name. It's on the tip of my tongue. Let's practice this colorful expression. It's on the tip of my tongue. Notice the vivid imagery. It's on the tip of my tongue. Now you try it. It's on the tip of my tongue. Wonderful. And native speakers use this phrase all the time when they're trying to remember names, words, or facts. Here's another memory phrase that's incredibly useful. And that's "now that you mention it," which you use when something someone says helps you remember something related. For example, "Now that you mention it, I did see her at the store yesterday." Let's practice this recognition phrase. Now that you mention it, notice how it shows connection. Now that you mention it, now you say it. Now that you mention it, perfect. And if you're finding that these phrases are helping you remember similar expressions you've heard before, that's exactly how language learning works. One phrase helps you recall others. Now here's something really important. We're going to cover some phrases that help you express uncertainty or doubt in polite, natural ways, because sometimes you need to disagree with someone or express that you're not sure about something. But you want to do it diplomatically without sounding confrontational or ignorant. The first phrase I want you to learn is, "I'm not entirely sure," but which allows you to share what you think while acknowledging that you might be wrong. For example, "I'm not entirely sure, but I think the meeting is at 3. Let's practice this humble expression. "I'm not entirely sure, but," notice how it shows modesty. "I'm not entirely sure, but," now you try it. "I'm not entirely sure, but," excellent. Another diplomatic phrase is, "I could be wrong, but," which has a similar function but sounds slightly more conversational. For instance, "I could be wrong, but didn't she say she was traveling this week?" Let's practice this uncertain expression. "I could be wrong, but," notice how it invites correction. "I could be wrong, but," now you say it. "I could be wrong, but," fantastic, and both of these phrases show intellectual humility, which native speakers really appreciate in conversations. Here's a phrase that's perfect when you want to suggest something tentatively, and that's "what if we," which introduces a possibility without being too pushy. For example, "What if we tried the new restaurant instead?" Let's practice this gentle suggestion. "What if we," notice how open it sounds. "What if we," now you try it. "What if we," beautiful. And this phrase invites discussion rather than demanding agreement, which makes it perfect for collaborative decision-making. Now, as we're coming toward the end of our time together, let me share with you some of the most powerful phrases for making strong, positive impressions in conversations, because these are the expressions that will help people remember you as someone who's engaging, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in connecting with others. The first phrase I want you to master is, "That's a great point," which shows that you're actively listening and you value the other person's contributions to the conversation. For example, if someone suggests a solution to a problem you've been discussing, you might say, "That's a great point. I hadn't thought of it that way." Let's practice this affirming response. "That's a great point." Notice how encouraging it sounds. "That's a great point." Now you say it. "That's a great point." Excellent. Another incredibly powerful phrase is, "I never thought of it that way," which shows that the other person has given you a new perspective, and people love to feel that they've contributed something valuable to your thinking. For instance, "I never thought of it that way. That really changes how I see the situation." Let's practice this enlightened response. "I never thought of it that way." Notice the genuine surprise and appreciation. "I never thought of it that way." Now you try it. "I never thought of it that way." Wonderful. And this phrase makes the other person feel heard and valued. Here's a phrase that's perfect for showing genuine interest in someone's expertise or experience. And that's, "You obviously know a lot about this," which acknowledges their knowledge and invites them to share more. For example, "You obviously know a lot about gardening. Do you have any tips for growing tomatoes?" Let's practice this respectful recognition. "You obviously know a lot about this." Notice how it shows respect. "You obviously know a lot about this." Now you say it. "You obviously." know a lot about this perfect, and people love to share their knowledge when they feel their expertise is appreciated. Now let me give you one final set of phrases that will help you sound confident and natural when you're wrapping up conversations, making future plans, or leaving people with positive final impressions. Because how you end interactions is just as important as how you begin them. And these closing phrases will ensure that people always feel good about the time they've spent talking with you. The first phrase is, "Thanks for taking the time," which shows appreciation for the conversation itself, whether it was planned or spontaneous. For example, "Thanks for taking the time to explain that to me, it really helped. Let's practice this grateful closing. Thanks for taking the time." Notice the sincere appreciation. "Thanks for taking the time. Now you try it. Thanks for taking the time. Excellent." Another beautiful closing phrase is, "Let's definitely do this again," which expresses that you've enjoyed the conversation and you'd like to repeat the experience. For instance, "This was so much fun. Let's definitely do this again soon. Let's practice this enthusiastic closer. Let's definitely do this again." Notice the positive energy. "Let's definitely do this again." Now you say it. "Let's definitely do this again." Fantastic. And this phrase leaves people feeling valued and looking forward to future interactions with you. And here's my final phrase for you today, one that's perfect for ending on a warm, caring note, and that's "take care of yourself," which shows genuine concern for the person's well-being. You might say, "It was wonderful seeing you again. Take care of yourself." Let's practice this caring farewell. Take care of yourself. Notice the warmth and concern. Take care of yourself. Now you say it. Take care of yourself. Beautiful. And this phrase works in almost any situation, from casual encounters with acquaintances to deeper conversations with close friends. So there you have it, 60 incredible phrases that are going to transform your daily conversations in English.